Guiding principles, the spirit of our traditions. Introduction. Guiding principles. Our 12 traditions are about relationships with ourselves, with our groups, and other service bodies, and our higher power. While they address our practices in service, they also provide a foundation for us to learn how to live. They are practical and spiritual at the same time. Our traditions help us to navigate. They remind us where we are going and where we are likely to run around. They also remind us that we steer our own ship. Unity and autonomy guide us, not uniformity in governments. We surrender authority to a higher power and come together as equals. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the addicts who still suffer. If we are to accomplish that, we need recovery ourselves, and we need to come together in unity to build the groups and provide services that make recovery available to us all. We need every principle, every resource, and every member. Humility, empathy, and love are the keys to selfless service, and selfless service frees us from self-centeredness at the core of our disease. Yet many of us who have tried to recover on services alone find, sooner or later, that without doing the hard work of the 12 steps, we do not have the tools to live by these principles. We need the steps if we are to follow the traditions, and if we need the traditions to create an atmosphere in which we will find love, safety, anonymity necessary to work the steps. Together, our steps and traditions allow us to grow and thrive and interact with others and to sustain ourselves through difficulty. These spiritual principles in practice can guide us through our decisions in service and throughout our lives. Although we each have a different way of connecting and learning about the traditions, we can all agree that these are the principles that keep us alive and free. The 12 traditions has been a part of the spiritual foundation of NA as we know it from the very beginning. The principles arose out of experience, practical lessons learned from the problems faced early in the development of our predecessors, Alcoholics Anonymous. Earlier programs created for addicts, including some bearing the same name, did not practice the traditions and did not survive. Even the NA as we know it today was nearly lost. Only when some of our founding members insisted on following the traditions did our fellowship begin to experience stability and growth. Those early members understood the necessity of the traditions for our survival. Our need for these principles is just as great today. Our traditions make our principles very clear, yet understanding and applications will draw us to study, interpret, and growth. The principles that keep our fellowship alive and free are universal, allowing us to be incredibly flexible. NA can flourish and thrive in cultures and contexts around the world. The 12 traditions are not negotiable, and that means that they cannot be bought, bartered, traded on, or sold. That does not mean we are rigid and inflexible or incapable of growth. Rather, seeing our traditions as limiting, we come to the understanding that they point us to the way of freedom. Our guiding principles help steer us clear of pitfalls, allowing us continued growth and change. Tradition is practice developed over time, which reflects both belief and identity. Traditions create community. They bind people together. Although traditions are vital to any community, the way any given tradition is practiced can evolve. A family may come together on the same holiday meal over a course of many generations, but every year there may be differences in the celebration. The important elements remain stable. We come together in love and unity as a part of something valuable and enduring. Our guiding principles do not change, but the way we practice them grows and develops as we do. Our principles remain the same, but we face fresh challenges to them all the time. A new problem in one community is often an old problem in another. As in our personal recoveries, we often feel unique or alone when we struggle, but most of our struggles are shared. If we're willing to be open about our differences and seek experiences, mostly we find someone who has been through the same thing. Sometimes, though, we must still go through it and learn for ourselves. Some experienced members saw this firsthand when they were doing outreach work for the new member in a place where NA was just getting started. One by one, the members from older communities shared their experience with the 12 traditions of NA. Some were emotional, some were philosophical, some went deep into the history and origins of each principle. Each time when the speaker finished, one of the newer members listening would ask a question like, "Yeah, okay, but can we buy refreshments for the meetings?" If all the answers were provided for us, we wouldn't have to spend much time in discussion. Simple issues wouldn't bring us together or drive us to outreach. We wouldn't learn much that way. As we build our relationships to our traditions, questions like, can we serve refreshments, can bring us to examine our principles, our values, and our priorities in ways we make decisions in our group. When we allow these discussions the time and the energy they deserve, our understanding of the spiritual principles underlining the 12 traditions deepens, and so do our practices. There are countless ways we can learn about traditions, from simply hearing them read in the meetings to studying them in great detail. One member shared his first learning experience with the traditions came through a simple exercise. My first sponsor told me to read the 12 traditions aloud to myself, replacing NA with my own name. It felt awkward at first, but it gave me a new way to look at the traditions. Whatever way our work in the traditions begin, the learning process is an ongoing journey, much like our work with the steps. The chapter, What Can I Do, from our basic text encourages new members to take steps outlined in the previous chapter as a way of answering the questions that may be troubling us. Begin your own program by taking step 1 from the previous chapter, how it works. Go on to step 2 and so forth. And as you go on, you will come to the understanding of the program for yourself. This is a critical line in the literature, and its appearance in the chapter that falls between the 12 steps and the 12 traditions is not coincidental. Even as we practice a program of recovery that is outlined for us in the literature and shared with us by our sponsors and in the meetings, ultimately we came to our own understanding. In fact, it is necessary for us to do so. If NA recovery will be a way of life for us and not just a shared and not just a phase we pass through, we must understand and make it our own. Understanding the traditions is a part of coming to and understanding the program for ourselves. If it is only through understanding and application that they work. How do we learn to understand and apply our traditions? In our groups across the fellowship and around the world, we've been answering these questions for many years, but the answers to particular questions are not always the same. We are engaged in creative action of the Spirit. Whether in our personal lives or in our service work, we may be surprised by the solutions that present themselves. This book offers a set of tools that can help each of us learn about our principles, consider some challenging questions, and come to an understanding for ourselves. About this book emerged from driving a need for a greater understanding of the principles of our traditions and how we apply them around the world. NA members have sought through practical and simple experience-based material on the 12 traditions. There are many differences in the ways we understand and practice these principles within our fellowship. And this workbook does not presume to declare one way of thinking or practicing right or wrong. At the same time, it wouldn't serve us very well to write a book that didn't help us answer the questions that troubled us so greatly. We gathered experience, strength, and hope from addicts across the fellowship. Worksheets handed down from our sponsors to sponsee, notes from hundreds of workshops, personal writings sent in by members around the world, stack of speaker recordings. Together, the work groups sorted through these materials, finding themselves in practices that were common in language and helped us understand in new ways. We counted every word and tried to make every word count. The writing exercises, discussions, prompts, and workshop questions that follow came from the material the members have been creating and using in smaller groups. This book comes from long discussion, sharing, and many, many questions we ask. Like all of our literature, this book is written by addicts for the shared experience of addicts recovering in Narcotics Anonymous. The result of a collection of tools and experience on how we work through issues together using the principles and embodied in the traditions. Working together brings us to common understanding. The conscience of the group develops as the group solves problems and handles routine businesses. We think a lot of our traditions. We argue about them a lot too. This workbook is not another service manual or an abstract collection of ideas, but a set of tools to help us think about and apply the traditions without tearing ourselves apart in the process. As members awaken spiritually and share with one another, their answers get woven into the fabric of our fellowships and conventional wisdom. Then, just when our thinking begins to harden into a dogma, another generation comes along and challenges to keep our perspective fresh. We remain open-minded and flexible. It is important to look at our literature and our experienced members for guidance, but ultimately each member has a right to understand and apply this program in the way that works best for them. It is our hope that this book will provide something for everyone on its path, although some parts of it might be more useful to some of us than others. We invite you to take what you need and leave the rest. In this book, the traditions are a set of guiding principles for working together, and the tools and texts and questions here are meant to facilitate discussion and inspire actions in our groups, and in our workshops, and in sponsorship. The material in this workbook is divided into sections for individual groups and service bodies. It may be that an individual member finds useful material in the group section, or the service body comes to life around the questions directed at the individual. The structure is modular. It can be used in any combination. This workbook doesn't need to be read or worked from beginning to end. When we keep an open mind, even casual conversation can be transformed into more understanding. I had an HETI commitment about an hour from where I lived. Shared a member. There'd be 3 or 4 of us in a car, and we'd be talking about the program the whole way there and back. I learned more about our traditions in that car than anywhere else. Sharing our experiences, exploring ideas together, and thinking about our principles and making decisions all contribute to our ever-evolving understanding. Staying open-minded and teachable about our basic principles allows our understanding to deepen and mature. We do not ever finish learning, even about the things that we know best. The questions in this book are not meant to be a complete and final list. We hope that we will start conversations more than we finish them. It is our belief that a member, group, or service body coming to the project of studying the traditions probably has a pretty clear idea of questions already. We hope that the questions here will spark discussions and thought, that they will bring you to read, write, and consider, and at the very least some of our time. And that at least some of our time, it will be clear that for all but most of our fundamental questions, there are usually more than one right answer. Coming to shared understanding is different from telling each other what the rules are. We would be selling ourselves short if we suggested that the applications of these principles were a simple matter of not breaking the rules. If Narcotics Anonymous were a program of compliance, most of us would have walked away or have been asked to leave. As with the 12 steps, we learn about these principles through experience. In the chapters that follow, there are many pieces and parts designed to work together or separately. Each tradition begins with the readings and exercises for all, followed by suggestions for members, groups, and service bodies. They are meant as a guide for writing and discussion, as topics for group inventory or group business meetings, and as prompts for discussion in service workshops. The descriptions that follows are meant to help serve as a guide to the parts for each chapter. Probably the best instructions for using the information in the workbook, however, are simply to be creative and work with other NA members in the process of learning about the traditions. Each of us is free to explore the material on our own, of course, in whatever way that makes sense. But as the NA step working guides, doing the work is part of the process we take with our sponsor and our group and our fellow members. Opening and closing readings. Each tradition begins and ends with a short reading. The first reading offers a reflection of the traditions in terms of our experience in our program. The closing readings brings together some of our common ideas and practices from the chapter. These readings frame the work in between, offering perspectives on the traditions that can help guide our work on our own recovery and in service. They may serve as meditations or as opening into a larger discussion. They may also be useful as readings in a recovery meeting, in a service committee meeting, or at the workshops. Word by word and spiritual principles. Two experiences that appear in each chapter stand on their own, as they can be useful for members in the group and in service bodies. Word by word prompts us to look at the words and phrases in each tradition and help build more complete understanding of the traditions as a whole. Spiritual principles ask us to do similar work with spiritual principles connected to each tradition. As an example is provided in each of these sections for each tradition, but there is room for continued exploration individually or as a group. Some of us use a dictionary to help in this work. As with many aspects of NA recovery and service, the possibilities for discussion and exploration are endless. 4 members. The section for members includes shared experience and questions explorations. One member explained that work on the traditions allowed her to learn who I am, who I want to be, and how I interact with others. This work can build on and extend our work in the steps, so it might make sense for us to approach this work much in the same way we do our step work. For many of us, that includes writing, discussion, meditation, thought, and practice. We might address these questions in the writings to share with our sponsor or use them as a guide in conversation. We may also find that these questions lead to other questions or that our discussions take us into a new territory. Sharing with our sponsors, trusted NA friends, or fellow servants is an important part of this work. 4 groups. This section of our group within each chapter offers experience, strength, and hope for NA groups seeking and understanding and applying traditions more effectively. Again, this section opens up some shared experience followed by questions for the group inventory. Some groups may choose to answer 1 or 2 questions each month or schedule workshops before or after the meeting. Some groups may choose to conduct annual inventory on all 12 steps, while others might want to work through them one tradition at a time. Our hope is simply that this material helps groups to be successful in their efforts to carry the NA message to an addict who still suffers. In service. Whenever we come together in service, we are already practicing traditions. Discussing a tradition together helps us build a common bond. We don't all need to agree how to understand and apply the tradition, but we can come to appreciate our different perspectives and understand that our differing points of view, our various understandings can enrich the culture of our service rather than to serve as conflict or division. The sections for the service bodies help us to explore the traditions we are practicing. The text and the questions included in the service sections of each chapter offer a variety of approaches for coming together to discuss the traditions in the spirit of unity and cooperation. Group inventory and service workshops. The texts and questions in the group and service sections of each tradition are meant to help NA groups and service bodies discuss our guiding principles. Each group and service committee is free to discuss the sections and questions in a way that makes the most sense based on their needs and their resources. The discussion questions are included in these chapters are simply meant to serve as conversation starters. The most important part of any discussion will be sharing the experience and perspectives that happen within each group, service bodies, or workshops. For this reason, it may be most effective to choose one or two questions for any given group, inventory meeting, or workshop. Those who are helping to organize the discussions may wish to choose a question or two in advance, asking those who are participating to help in the selection. If impossible, and encouraging those participating to read from the section from the tradition prior to the discussion. The section might also be read before introducing the question to be discussed. As with so much else that happens in the free exchange of experience and ideas is an atmosphere of support and mutual respect leads to the growth and understanding. The traditions are our guiding principles, and as our reading reminds us, it is only through understanding and application that they work. There is no right way to use this book. The wrong way to use this book is some kind of qualifier or proof that having worked the traditions properly. We do ourselves a disservice when we create new requirements for memberships or service, or when we suggest that one addict's recovery contributions in service is more legitimate than the others. This book won't tell you whether to serve refreshments in your home group, but we hope it will make it easier for your group to come to the decisions it can grow with. And we hope that each of us will find a deeper relationships with these principles in our NA service, in our spirituality, and in our own lives.